You're listening to the Women in Cybersecurity podcast, where global voices meet to inspire, inform, and ignite change in the world of cyber. Hosted by Yuri Diogenes, Alexandra Francu, and myself, Yulia Iancu, we bring you real stories, expert insights, and bold conversations from the front lines of cybersecurity. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Women in Cybersecurity podcast. We're here again with a new guest. Today we have Trisha Alexander. We have the episode 6, and I'm very excited about this episode. Alexandra, maybe you can help us with more information about Trisha.
Yes, so today we're thrilled to welcome Trisha Alexander, a seasoned cybersecurity expert currently serving as a senior security consultant at Google, operating remotely from the Dallas area, along with Yuri as well, with over a decade of experience spanning global tech firms, consumer brands, and security consultancies. Trisha brings a wealth of insight into threat detection, incident response, and enterprise security strategy. Her journey began as a business system analyst at Fujitsu, where she quickly transitioned into cybersecurity roles. She went on to lead security initiatives at PepsiCo, Epsilon, and most notably Mandiant, which is now part of Google Cloud. Her career reflects not only technical excellence, but also a deep commitment to evolving with the industry and mentoring others along the way. Trisha's story is one of resilience, growth, and leadership. And today she's here to share her experiences, lessons learned, and advice for women looking to break into, pun intended, and thrive in cybersecurity. So let's dive in.
Trisha, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the introduction.
Yes, I met Trisha recently in a cybersecurity event that we had here in Microsoft Irving, here in Texas, and her background is super impressive, so I immediately invited her to be on the show. I appreciate you taking the time to join so early here in Texas. So
Thank you.
thank you for waking up a little earlier. So I would like to get started, Trisha, because in your career there was a moment that you transitioned to cyber. So I'd like to go back to that moment. What really made you transition to cyber, coming from more a core IT type of role?
Right. So I actually graduated from UT Dallas with an information systems degree. And because of that, that's not really security focused. So when I was job searching, a business analyst position at Fujitsu is the job that I applied and got for. I did that for a year and a half. I realized it probably just wasn't for me. It was a lot of data entry in SAP, and I just knew that I felt like I was getting a little bit bored, actually, and I wanted to try something different. I have always loved computers. I grew up playing video games, on handhelds as well as desktops. So that's what kind of led me to get interested in this career. But how I actually made that change at Fujitsu is I actually just went around to different directors at Fujitsu and asked them if they had any openings. And one of the directors was the cybersecurity director. And luckily enough, he said that he did have an opening. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. I'll apply. And that's how I got into that team at Fujitsu.
That's awesome.
Wow. I'm really impressed by your bravery. I think I want to add that when you say you want something and you see an opportunity, you ask for it and you don't wait for a job to be already posted somewhere.
Yeah.
So what would be some of other pivotal moments or challenges that shaped your path into this field?
I guess I would say maybe not getting the job because it just was kind of like pure luck. So I always recommend to people take a chance, ask if they had any openings, ask to see how you can get into a position, just because the only thing that they could say is no, right? And that's not going to hurt anyone. But I would say take that risk and just asking. My challenges, I will say, after getting the job was actually just learning security as a whole, because again, my background didn't come from cybersecurity at all. So for the first year or 2 years that I had that position, it was just a lot of learning, a lot of mentorship from other employees that were already in the cybersecurity team. But it was a lot of studying, even outside of work, getting caught up, taking, like tickets or incidents head on, trying to learn from everyone as much as I could.
How did you know that this field is for you? How did you find this passion?
I think it kind of stemmed from actually my dad and grandfather's career, actually. Both my dad owns a security company, but not cybersecurity. It's more like physical security, like hard access, fire alarms, burglary systems, stuff like that. And then actually my grandfather used to be a private investigator back in the days. So I will say that growing up, I was always kind of around security, maybe not cyber specifically, but I always had some knowledge around that. And I think that kind of translated into wanting to get into this for my own, but in a unique way. So, cyber. And because I've always liked computers and video games and stuff like that, I kind of thought like, hey, this is really interesting. Like I've always had this passion for just computers in general. Let's see where this goes.
I love what you said about what's the worst that can happen? Just say no, and that's very true. I really loved what you said. So I understand that you were very, very young when you actually starting to look into cybersecurity, asking around, and trying to get a job. Do you have an advice for the young women who are trying to get into this field and how to start? How was it for you? How were the first months, maybe years? How did you feel in this field?
For your first question, to talk to the younger women that are trying to get into it, I will say I think I just kind of lucked out. But again, I think how like what I said earlier is just go for it, be adventurous, be courageous, and asking around. Seeing what folks are looking for. Really putting in the time and effort to learn cybersecurity outside of work, maybe even on the weekends, because I've done that many of times at cafes. Sorry, what was your second question?
How was it? Do you have any advice for so actually no, the second one was how were the first months for you
Oh, okay.
in
Yeah,
the cybersecurity job?
it was really rough. Learning about, event IDs, because I was doing incident response, so learning about event IDs, what, like when you look at like traffic on like a sim, what is normal versus what's abnormal, because to me, everything just looked like a different language at that point. So it was super hard. It was super stressful. There was days where like I'll just be fully transparent. Like sometimes I would just kind of like cry because it was just so overwhelming to try to like learn all this. And there was this pressure of, trying to meet everyone's expectations, not be seen as like a failure. And I think a part of this also goes back to like being a woman in cybersecurity. When you join this field, there's this, at least for me, there's this pressure to, represent women as a whole. And I didn't want to be seen as someone who wasn't serious about this, who wasn't passionate. So, not only did I want to not be seen as a failure for myself, but I also wanted to make sure that I was representing women in cybersecurity as the best that I could.
Yeah, that's interesting point, Trisha, because unconsciously you end up adding maybe even more pressure than you needed because you were with this internal pressure to have to represent the entire group, which is
Right.
probably also a healthy pressure because you
Right.
probably excel right in the beginning because you were so confident that you had to do a great job to represent, right? So there is also a good side of adding this pressure, right?
Right. I would say even now, I still have that pressure, Mandiant, where I, want to make sure that I do represent women to the best that I can. And because of that pressure makes me dedicated to, learn different skills and make sure that I'm on top of my game. And when I do talk to clients, not only am I representing Mandiant to the best of my ability, but I'm also representing other women in the field.
By the way, I love that you still say Mandiant and not Google.
Yes. So I started at Mandiant back when it was FireEye. So I do take a lot of pride in the Mandiant branding still. And while I do appreciate Google and I do respect Google, I do still think that my roots are still with Mandiant at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a bit more about being a woman in the cybersecurity field, especially in the incident, in the SOC team. Yeah. So, what do you think about intuition? Because I remember how hard it was to know when to panic and when to not panic, depending on the incident that there was. So, how does intuition play a role in here?
I will say I still panic here and there. That is it is something I'm getting better at, but I still think that, when you get, roll onto an incident, sometimes there are times where you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what is going on. I will say with intuition though, I think it just comes with time. I don't think there's any way to craft or hone that skill. I think it just literally comes with practice and doing other incidents, knowing that your team members also have your back. Again, it just takes time, and I also think knowing that your team members are there with you and knowing that you can always receive help from them is also really important and kind of calms your nerves a bit. But I will say there are times where I still home a panic. So
What would you say that talking about this sort of intuition and you coming from a family that, so let's say that you grew up in a cybersecurity aware family and with
Right.
some cybersecurity roots that probably subconsciously were passed on to you. What would you say that builds that muscle of intuition over time for a woman in cybersecurity?
So while my dad actually has no IT skills, I'm usually the person he calls when something is acting weird with his computer. I will say growing up in a security environment, whether that be, physical security or cybersecurity, it has taught me, how to kind of pick out weird things, hearing his stories about his experiences with, not necessarily threat actors, because I don't think you would label that as, an attacker in the physical or physical security realm, but just hearing how he evaluates situations, I think that can also be applied to, cybersecurity as well, scoping out the environment, understanding, who might try to break into either a company or a corporation or even a house. I think I've been able to take those skills and apply it to my own cybersecurity skills and, asking questions, observing things before coming to conclusions, understanding that, you need to be a little bit more rational and grounded before making decisions. And I always tell myself if I'm ever feeling emotional, it's okay to step away, even take a day to think about things before you come back with an actual action. Because again, you want to make sure that the best course of action that you're taking is rational and not from an emotional standpoint.
Trisha, how now going back to now for the things that you are doing today, how I think that this is the question that we sometimes have to ask for every guest because every guest has a different perspective, but how AI is changing the things that you do in this field. That's part one of the question. Part two is, do you see this as a new essential skill that people need to have to enter this field?
Yeah, so actually we lead one of the AI service lines that Mandiant offers. It's maximizing AI for defenders. So we teach clients how to utilize AI in different parts of cyber defense, so that whether that be incident response, threat detection, threat hunting, etc. I do think it's a skill, but I hope that people don't rely on it solely to do their job. I think AI, at least from my standpoint, is a great way to bounce ideas off of like a computer or, like an AI model to kind of unlock things that you didn't think about or to, kind of brainstorm with it to maybe lead to better actions that you can take. So let's say you're trying to create a threat hunt for your company. Well, maybe like using AI to come up with, threat hunt hypothesis would be something I would recommend because you might have some ideas, but maybe AI can take it to the next step or give you ideas that you wouldn't necessarily have thought about. In terms of other skills, I do think, again, I think AI is here to stay. There's, again, different ways to use it. I've also recommend using it as kind of like a playbook in a way. I don't know if y'all know this, but about 2 years ago, I actually switched from cyber defense at Mandiant to security architecture. And while I've been making that transition or, doing these new types of engagements, I have used AI to help me, learn about different types of GPOs, learning about Active Directory environments or configurations, just because my team members are also really busy. And so I have been able to use AI to actually learn different things about, Active Directory and cloud environments that might have not been so, easy to get to, or, again, like AI gives it to you kind of within seconds, whereas had I not used AI, I probably would have had to do a lot of like digging and research.
Can you walk us through a day in the life of Trisha at Mandiant, not Google?
Right. I will say one thing I really enjoy about consulting is every day is a little bit different. But a typical day kind of revolves around maybe report writing. So I focus a lot on Active Directory security assessments as well as disaster and recovery assessments. So this might be leading workshops with clients to understand their environment. It could be also going through their data and Active Directory configurations to see what's misconfigured or vulnerable. And then after I go through that data and take my workshop notes, this is when I'll actually start the report writing, which is a majority of my time actually spent at Mandia, is just writing reports on what I've seen that's misconfigured in someone's environment, and then providing step-by-step technical recommendations on how to fix that. I also do presentations on the report itself. So of course, I'll provide the report to the client, but I also do presentations just for like quick summaries of like what we saw in the environment and how they can fix it. And then another part of my day-to-day work is actually responding to IR remediation requests. So we work really close with our IR team to help the clients that the IR teams are responding to help remediate their environments so that if an attacker or a threat actor does get kicked out of the environment, we are able to provide the client with remediation, steps or recommendations to prevent the threat actor from coming back again.
And what would you say that are the non-negotiables that your current job, requires?
Not only a deep understanding of security, but also soft skills. I think that is something super important, and that's what differentiates a cybersecurity analyst from a consultant. Is not only do you have to be very technical, but you also have to have those soft skills to be able to communicate with your clients. Handle difficult situations, handle when a client might be, freaking out because they are in an active incident. You need to be able to talk to them, and not only talk to them in a technical way, but also maybe talk to them more at a higher level. Because again, the people who you're talking to are going to be different. So, if you're talking to the client's IR team, of course, you need to be able to effectively communicate in, technical verbiage what's going on. But at the same time, you might have a meeting like 1 or 2 hours later with their executive team, and you need to be able to communicate as well at a higher level what's going on. So, not only can you be technical, but you need to really have those soft skills and personal skills to really, present what's going on. And I find that when I do interview candidates for Mandiant, this is something that I feel like a lot of candidates struggle with, is that soft skill.
I'm really curious if you have ever found a vulnerability or a finding that was very interesting and you'd like to share with us.
I don't know if I found anything unique or crazy out there, but I will say I do run into a lot of misconfigurations that you would think clients would have fixed already, but they haven't. And it's really surprising to see, what our clients have and just are like okay with. Some things that kind of stick out is, having administrative accounts that, don't have their passwords get rotated quite often, even the
And
passwords
the logic
themselves.
behind
Yeah.
the reason
And
why.
yeah, or just like the risk acceptance. I always find that very interesting. Also just having, I guess, like passwords that aren't even 15 characters or longer for these service accounts or admin accounts. It's also very eye-opening to our clients to understand that, if you're going to have a PAM, which is a place where you can store your passwords for your more elevated users, they usually have that login to the PAM connected to AD. And what they don't really realize is you get ransomed and your AD environment is down, like how are you going to access those passwords if you have to rebuild your environment? So these are things like you would think that clients would have thought this through, but maybe folks are busy or maybe they have things that they want to prioritize over this. So it's always been very interesting to see how clients handle this when we do present the findings to them, but they're usually always understanding and really appreciative. So I'm always happy to help and point things out. I don't think it's anyone's fault. I just think, things get busy and, it is what it is.
I will double down on the AI question because I think a lot of our audience here, they are women that are trying to get to these fields. And there is a common concern these days about AI replacing people on the job. And I kind of see that in some specific jobs. For example, if you think about the SOC analyst level 1 that is doing that initial triage of alerts and things like that, that really can be automated by AI if you think about. I'm not sure.
Even SOAR, like SOAR platforms, you don't even need AI. Like,
Yeah, even SOAR. But when you
Yeah.
kick the AI as an extra layer, now that whole triage done traditionally by the SOC level 1 can be vanished. So my question is, first, if you agreed that this will happen, replace some level 1 type of roles, and for these people that are on this level 1, what they need to do to get to the next level in upskilling actually.
Yeah, I guess, I haven't really worked in the SOC for like a year or two, but I will say, based on what I've seen with AI, I still think level 1 SOC analysts are going to be needed. Maybe not as many, but I do think there still needs to be human validation of what AI deems as a true positive or a false positive. And I say this because even in my own work, when I've, asked Gemini for, advice on things, there are still times where I do find that the results aren't, I guess they weren't what I was expecting, or, later on I do some research on the side and I find out that maybe the answers that were provided weren't really correct. And so I think we might get to a point where, the level 1 SOC analysts aren't needed anymore. But I think currently right now with where AI is standing, I would be hesitant to say that everyone should put their whole trust into that and eliminate level 1 SOC positions, completely. I do think there is still a need for that, even if that is, the human validation of AI's results. In terms of like, what skills or, if level 1 SOC analysts are needed and, like what skills they should have, I think that's really hard. And like, that's something that even I struggle with when I talk to folks trying to get into this industry, just because I don't really know, honestly. Like, I do think that they should, look into AI and, study, AI and see how it can apply to, their skill set that they're trying to learn in terms of cybersecurity. But it is a challenging question that I'm not even sure if I know the right answer to, but I would say just keep going at it. You can still learn, even if AI is going to, might take that position away. I do know there's also companies that are still very hesitant to use AI. And, um, I still think there will be a demand for that type of position, maybe just not as many openings.
Mhm.
Fair.
What emerging threats would you say that perhaps women entering the cybersecurity would face?
That's as in just like in general or more at like a technical level?
It can be both.
Um, I guess women specific. I'm not honestly too sure about that. I think even in my position when I talk to clients, there can be clients that and I'm not saying it's 100% true, but I do question if they take what I say um seriously, if that makes sense. I feel like sometimes when I have my male colleagues speak to clients, I feel like they might take their responses more seriously, or they think that, it's true. Whereas when I say something, I feel like I get questioned sometimes more. Sometimes there seems to be more hostility towards myself. And again, I'm not sure if this is related to me being a woman, but I do sometimes think about that. And I can't help but wonder if, women trying to get into this field, I just hope that the hiring managers don't have that same opinion. I do hope that they are open to both women and men applying to jobs, and I hope that they treat them fairly. But I will say that I have faced that with clients at times. And so I can't help that, if I face it with clients, I'm sure women applying to these positions might also be facing it.
How do you manage it? How do you not let this overcome you and constantly feed your fears eventually?
This is something that I'm actually like still trying to figure out and learn, but you just kind of have to let it go. And I think another thing that you want to think about too is if you do feel like this is happening to you in an interview, it probably is a sign that you don't want to work there to begin with. So I would just be like, hey, like this probably just isn't for me. If they're going to treat me like this in the interviewing phase, I can't help what they're going to, how they might treat you actually once you get hired. But I would say that, just try to let it go. There's going to be uh, people out there who are going to be rude regardless. And that's just how the world is. And so I think you're going to have to develop a skill where, just let it roll off your back. It's at the end of the day, it's just a person, hopefully you don't have to interact with them again, but, just finding a way to not only cope with it, but let it, not take over your mind for like a day or a week, just be like, whatever, so what, this is just one person out of many and their opinion doesn't matter. As long as you have, your confidence in yourself and that you have the skills and you're, knowledgeable in these things, who cares if one person doesn't, think you're qualified? I'm sure other people out there will definitely see that in you.
Issue is if there are multiple other opinions, then it becomes a DDoS. So
I will say I run into that very rarely though. I think if I do run into one or two people like that, it's very far and few. I honestly don't get bombarded with that often. Especially, at my own job, I'm working with different clients almost on a monthly basis. So it is very, very rare for me to run into that. Maybe once or twice a year.
That's great.
yeah.
You, do you have any question or can I go next?
Yeah, you can go.
Oh, okay.
It's just on my top
Uh,
of mind question was maybe because do you believe this is a gender problem or more like an attitude or
That's
self-trust, self-belief?
it's hard to say. That's why I'm a little hesitant to just blame it on that because again, and I don't know about what y'all believe, but I have noticed that cybersecurity does attract maybe some egos. And I don't know if that just stems from them, having those egos or if it also stems from, sexism. And so that's why I'm a little bit hesitant to just, quickly say, well, this guy or this person, doesn't believe me because I think they're being sexist. It's
Mhm.
I at the end of the day, I actually will never know because it's in their mind, right?
Yeah.
And I'll never know what they're actually thinking. So I do want to be careful with just saying like, well, yes, if I run into a difficult client, they're obviously sexist because that isn't true. But I will say, just in general, there are a lot of egos in this field. I don't know if y'all agree or not, but I definitely run into quite a few. And so I will say it's probably, I'm sure not everyone that is difficult to work with is, sexist, but I will say there at least are some egos. And I think I'm a little bit more confident on that statement. So,
yeah, I think
Yeah.
ego is something that definitely has a lot in cyber, regardless of the gender.
right.
And I like that you are being hesitant on this because you can easily uh, play the victim card and say, "Oh, this is just because I'm a woman," right? But you
Right.
don't want to go directly to that conclusion because that's, as you said, you never know, and
Right.
there is a ego problem in this field for sure. And a title sometimes that have a lot of weight. If people
Right.
love to have those long titles, I mean, if you go to any LinkedIn profile nowadays, it's such a huge title, and then you go to the actual title on the global address list, and you see this completely different, right? It's again the inflation of the ego. I know personally people that they are, uh, for example, cloud solution architect, but on LinkedIn they show as director of security, blah blah blah. It's a director? No, you're not a director. So there are
Right.
a lot of egos in this field.
And
Director of
it's
his own life, his
right. And it's hard to like, I understand how they might manifest just because you do want to be confident in your career and you want to advocate for yourself. But I do think there is a fine line between being confident and having that like ego that's a little bit overbearing. So I do, again, I just want to say like you should definitely be confident in yourself, but I do think that sometimes people should be a little bit more aware of how they come off.
Oh yeah,
It does
absolutely.
sometimes it does sometimes feel like there is not enough room in this field, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. And it's not like that because I think we should all be, helpful and there's enough space for everyone. And that's something I really enjoy working at Mandiant is, everyone's willing to help out. If you have a question about anything, there's going to be 2 or 3 people within a minute or so commenting on your question saying, hey, let's jump on a call. Like I can go over this with you. And I really love that about Mandiant is everyone's really in it together and they're willing to help anyone out.
Okay, so the question I have is about your experience going from a mid-size type of company like Mandiant and then
Right.
join the big tech like Google. W-
Right.
What was your experience in terms of agility? Because we all know that a bigger company sometimes is not as agile as a small one. How did it change your daily activities and your overall experience?
Um, it was quite challenging at first. Moving over to the Google environment actually took Mandy about a year, if not longer. For the first year that we were acquired at Google, we actually still had our Mandiant laptops. We were still in like our Mandiant domain. They rolled us over into the Google environment in phases. But I think again, I'm not in leadership, so I'm not exactly sure like what was going on, but I will say it was definitely overwhelming at first. When I was working at, just Mandiant itself, I felt like everyone knew each other. You talked to the same people. Everyone was, really familiar with everyone, or even if you weren't familiar, you could recognize names really easily. It's still like that to a degree, I would say, even after joining Google, because I do think a lot of Mandiant folks do stay within the Mandiant bubble that we have created at Google. But, like going to these offices at Google, especially like the New York office, there's multiple buildings and they're huge, and it reminds me of like college or high school. Like you see all these people, you don't know them. It's just really overwhelming. Even sometimes like,
Intimidating a bit, right?
yeah, it is. And then in terms of just like processes, there's a lot of red tape now. You can't just go and do something. You have to submit, things, they have to get approved. Sometimes, you have to abide by what Google says they want you to do. You can't just do what you want to do. Right now, we're actually in the process of moving our, Mandiant report templates from Microsoft Word over to Google's, like their own word processor now, because, we work for Google. So why are we producing our reports in Microsoft now? So these are just things that have been a little bit challenging. Just even learning the Google, work suite has been very challenging, going from Outlook to Gmail, or going from Teams to, Google Chat or Google Meet. It's these little things that we've been having to kind of learn, but it has been a little bit challenging. And so we've been having to rework things to fit the Google environment versus the previous Mandiant environment, which was Microsoft based.
I'm curious because you're mentioning about all these new processes, layers, extra layers. How important it is for your current role as a security architect consultant? How important it is for you to have that level of creativity and flexibility to be able to strengthen and harden an organization's security posture?
Like how, I guess, sorry, could you reword that?
How important it is for you to be flexible and creative in your current role so that you can help eventually your clients.
Yeah, you do have to be really flexible because each environment's different, right? Everyone has their things configured a little bit differently. They might be using different tools. And I don't know if you know this, but Mandiant is agnostic when it comes to helping our clients. We don't just help, clients that are using the Google Suite or using GCP. We, help anyone out with any type of, software or tools. And so because of that, we do have to be really flexible. We do have to, sometimes spend a couple days researching on different tools that we might not know about. We do also have to bring in SMEs in our team that, can help clients, just because I might be on a client that has a tool that I'm not familiar with. So I might have to, reach out to another Mandiant, consultant on my team that's more familiar with this tool. So we do have to be, open to change. We do have to sometimes put in the hours to learn a tool that we might not be familiar about. We also, we have meetings quite often as to how to tackle a problem that we've never faced before, especially if it's a transformation project, because when we are in these like transformation projects, we actually have to tailor our recommendations to what they want. This isn't just something that is cookie cutter. It's really like detailed, and we really have to focus on how we can make this specific client better and it's always going to be different from client to client. So it takes a lot of planning, a lot of research, a lot of talking to other folks at Mandiant who are more knowledgeable in things. But, when we are working with our clients, we try to provide the best recommendations that we can based on their unique environment.
And how do you juggle your work-life balance, considering staying on top of everything please do let me know if it's even possible to stay up to speed with everything emerging in the security area. And how do you protect your own persona, time, interests, hobbies even? How do you manage that?
Staying up with current security trends, luckily, we do have an intel side at Mandiant, and they are very vocal about what they find, anything new that's emerging. We have different spaces, which is like different, I guess the equivalent of teams would be like groups or channels. And so they are regularly posting new findings or new news articles that they're publishing about the latest things that they're seeing on their side. We also have Virus Total now. We, have the Google Threat Intelligence platform. So again, they keep us up to date. We also have folks just in our own team posting articles about new findings and everything. So I will say, I think within like Mandiant's bubble, people are posting pretty frequently about new things that are emerging in the security world. Me personally, it can be a little hard to keep up to date with things. I try my best, but at the end of the day, I can't read every news article. Like I got a job to do. But in terms of work-life balance, it can, go up and down. There are times where sometimes I do have to work a little overtime. Sometimes I might have to work on the weekends. But there are also times where, I get to chill a little bit. And I think that's just consulting in general. It kind of goes up and down. Especially in security too, incidents happen, but then there's times where, we don't see as many incidents, but I will say they usually focus around times when people are going on vacation. So we'll see if it gets busy in a couple months, but I do try to step away from the computer as best as I can. I try not to check my phone at night. It is hard. And again, this is something that I'm even trying to work on because I always want to see what's going on. I don't want to miss anything that comes in. But, for myself, I exercise pretty frequently. I get away from the computer as best as I can. I try to find hobbies that I can do outside of work that are not computer or even IT related. So I will say it is hard, but I do try to pry myself away from looking at a screen just because after 8 hours, 5 times a week, the last thing I want to do is be looking at a screen for another couple hours.
Yes, absolutely right. And I think that gives the right balance to the sort of engagement life that you have in this field. And probably it relates
Right.
to another field that is demanding from stay near the laptop.
Right. But I will say, working at Mandiant, I have never worked this hard, but I've also have never felt this rewarded from the work that I've put in. Like I feel super rewarded when I see our clients, do better. They come out of things more secure. It's super, like, it really is rewarding to see our clients do better. But again, that just takes a lot of hard work. But I'm not saying that my other, jobs weren't as rewarding, but I will say in this job, at least, I definitely do put in a lot more hours than in the past. But I think it is worth it to see our clients do better and succeed.
Well, we are marching towards the end. I just want to comment and ask a follow-up question on that. I'm not sure if Yulia will have another one, but I think we have space for 2 more. One now.
Yep.
You touched on a very important point, which is fulfillment. And once you start to work also, not only because of you aim to have a better salary, we all want to
Right.
keep growing financially. But
Right.
if you don't have fulfillment, if you don't love what you do, the salary really doesn't pay off because you
Right.
can make a lot of money, and be miserable.
Right.
And definitely you are very passionate about what you do. So just as a wrap up, if you are going to give an advice to this new generation that is joining, what will be your advice in terms of finding something that brings you fulfillment versus just having a good salary?
I would say first start off in figuring out what exactly you enjoy about security, whether that be red teaming, incident response, threat detection, threat hunting, etc., architecture, because there are different parts of security and they're vastly different. So I think, if you want to feel fulfilled, you need to figure out what part of security really speaks to you. And, for myself, I've done a career change and, I still love cyber defense, but right now I've been very passionate about learning more about architecture. And I think that's what's led me to continue doing this type of work, even if it does require extra hours sometimes. But I would say my first advice is just figure out exactly what you want to do in security and work towards that. I also just, think joining, groups outside of your company, such as, there's a lot of organizations within, at least in the Dallas area. I'm sure there's other organizations in other cities. I know there's like B-sides, stuff like that, where, you can join these groups and talk to other folks who are in security as well. And I feel like that also helps me get more passionate about things because you're talking to other people who speak the same language, and you can really, start to connect with people, and they can, you know you can vent to them about maybe some of the issues you're having, and they can vent to you. But at the end of the day, you're both helping each other out. You're able to really, connect with other folks who are in this field and can really understand you. And I think that also has led me to be passionate about this because you hear about their achievements and you hear about how they did things. And I think it's fun to hear how people have gotten here because everyone has their different path and how they got to where they're at now. So I think these are just different recommendations I would, tell folks if, they want to stay passionate, just because at least for me, like, staying home, not having anyone to talk to, it can definitely get to you. So I do think, putting yourself out there, talking to other people, figuring out what you enjoy about security and focusing on that, I think that's what can keep that passion burning.
Yeah, great advice. Anyone have any final question?
Yes, I do. So I think that you touched upon a very impressive and yet up to speed topic, which is feeling intimidated sometimes by the level of the organization, the complexity of the processes, the fact that you're a woman operating in cybersecurity. What's one advice that you would give now to the women who are thinking about joining this field of cybersecurity on how to overcome this feeling of overwhelming, and what is something that you felt was missing for you?
I would just make sure that you have like a really good support system, having like a mentor, especially a woman who you can kind of talk to and figure out, how they did things and provide, recommendations on how to overcome that. I actually have my own mentor here at Mandiant who she's an amazing woman. She's really high up at Mandiant. She's a little bit older than myself, so she's experienced things that I'm going through now. So having, I think, a solid mentor can really help you if you ever feel overwhelmed, because you can definitely talk to them and be open and personal about the things that you're experiencing. I will say other advice is just, again, it isn't the end of the world when it comes to, security. Things happen. Uh, but again, life goes on. I know maybe an IR with like involving a hospital might be a little bit different, but when it comes to other incidents, just with, like your regular client, yeah, it's going to be overwhelming, but at the end of the day, no one's dying, right? And so I think that's something to keep in mind, that yes, it is something serious that you need to, approach, and, work on, but just remember that, there's a lot of other things that are happening. At the end of the day, like it's probably going to work out. Don't doubt yourself, and just, be confident in what you do. That would be my advice. At least that's what I tell myself. But something else I also want to focus on too is it's also okay to have imposter syndrome. I think I mentioned at the talk that I had at Microsoft, but even I still suffer from imposter syndrome sometimes. And it's something that I just have to deal with. And it's okay to feel like that. Don't feel shameful about it. It's just, be confident in yourself. But I know it can be hard at times, but, I think even I go through it. So, it's okay.
Well, Trisha, it was amazing to have you on the show. Great insights. This is going to be a super important episode for our listeners. Again, thank you for making yourself available so early. Actually, it's almost 8 a.m. Here in Texas, so I think that you will also start to get going with your business as usual.
Right. And I also want to say thank you for inviting me. It was a great experience. And, I love talking to the community, especially women, about these things. So I also wanted to just say thank you for the invite as well.
Absolutely. It was amazing to have you. All right, everyone. So this is a wrap for today's episodes. Thank you very much for your audience. Make sure to subscribe. This episode, just like the others, are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And stay tuned. We have a lot more to come. Thank you.